Breeding animals for human use. Does existence have inherent value? The claim that domesticated animals owe their existence to humans is often used to justify using them for human purposes. However, this argument ignores that existence can be a source of pain and suffering for sentient beings. Domestication is the selective breeding and management of species to align with human needs and desires. It involves imposing human will on other species to adapt them to human preferences. Farm animals aren't natural. They are more like purposefully engineered beings than purely natural ones. This process often results in significant health problems and suffering for the animals involved. Domestication results in animals being exploited and subordinated to humans, perpetuating the notion that certain beings exist to serve the needs and desires of others. Tens of billions of animals are bred yearly for food, with an estimated 80% raised in intensive or factory farms. In other words, human intervention creates billions of animals every year, destined for immense suffering. Lives of suffering that would not have existed if we did not make them. Creating lives bound for suffering. The idea that animals should be grateful to us for breeding them is flawed, as it assumes that existence is always superior to non-existence and that animals on farms have good lives. The assumption that existence is always desirable overlooks critical viewpoints, such as Schopenhauer's. Schopenhauer believed that life alternates between suffering and boredom due to our insatiable desires, which cause dissatisfaction and misery. According to him, all sentient beings experience inherent suffering, which is an essential aspect of their existence. Creating new sentient beings raises moral questions about the perpetuation of suffering in life. We must consider if we should continue bringing new sentient life into the world. Although Schopenhauer's claim that all life is suffering may be debatable, it's difficult to argue that billions of farm animals don't endure a life filled with suffering. Most farm animals' lives are full of misery, cramped spaces, painful procedures without relief and distressing slaughter processes. The animals in the industry suffer due to harsh and unnatural conditions, which deprive them of their natural behaviors. If these animals are bound to experience significant suffering, creating them for human use raises profound moral concerns. Breeding animals, while they have more negative than positive experiences, is an ethical problem that cannot be overlooked. Is creating life that is destined to suffer morally justifiable? The non-identity thought experiment. The non-identity problem is a thought experiment that questions the morality of bringing sentient beings into a life of suffering. Suppose a couple are carriers of a genetic condition that may cause their child to suffer from a debilitating disease. They have two options. They can conceive now and have a child who will suffer from the disease and die at a young age, or they can wait a few years and conceive a different child who will not have the condition. This choice raises a fundamental ethical question. Is it morally justifiable to subject a being to torment by bringing them into a life of pain and suffering? The couple can prevent the birth of a child with a genetic disease by waiting to conceive a different child, as another sperm and egg will be fertilized. The choice itself acknowledges the potential for harm and suffering in existence. Benatar's asymmetry hypothesis states that the absence of pain is good, even without an experiencer. Still, the absence of pleasure is not bad if there is no one to experience it. Delaying conception to ensure a healthy child shows an awareness of life's fundamental imbalance. The potential harm and suffering outweigh the potential benefits, prompting caution in bringing new life into existence. Suppose existence only has value when the overall weighting of positive experiences outweighs the negative. In that case, the morality of breeding animals for food or other purposes becomes a subject of concern. Most animals raised for human use experience significant suffering during their lives. If their existence doesn't yield an overall balance favoring well-being, it may be morally wrong to breed them into existence in the first place. Life, suffering and non-existence. Consider two scenarios. In scenario A, a person is born and perceives their life as fulfilling and content, while in scenario B, that person is never born. Most people would likely prefer scenario A since it involves a perceived positive life experience. This suggests one can view existence positively based on one's sense of fulfillment. Now consider scenario C. The person is born into a world of unimaginable torture and suffering. In scenario D, the person is never born, spared a life of unending torment. In this case, most people would likely choose scenario D over C. It is better to have never been born than to suffer a life of misery and torture. This contradicts the idea that existence is always good. It implies that non-existence can be preferable in extreme cases. Similarly, intentionally breeding animals for human needs subjects these animals to suffering and hardship. For example, the existence of a factory-farmed pig likely involves so much intense suffering that any moments of enjoyment are eclipsed. Pregnant pigs are confined to cramped gestation crates. They cannot move freely or turn in these spaces and can barely stand up or lie down comfortably. Piglets are commonly separated from their mothers shortly after being born. Painful procedures like tail docking and teeth clipping are frequently performed without adequate pain relief. Factory farm sows are continuously artificially impregnated throughout their lives. They're typically slaughtered when their productivity declines, usually around 2 to 3 years of age. If we accept that it's better for sentient beings not to exist than to endure a life of such misery, breeding these pigs is morally reprehensible. Creating beings solely to exploit them. Picture a group of humans born into a world where all their needs are met, living in a comfortable and secure environment. Their purpose isn't to live their lives. Instead, they exist to be used as lab rats or organ donors solely for the benefit of other humans. Consider the plight of these humans, born into a life where their entire existence serves only the interests of others. Similarly, while some animals may experience a relatively comfortable life on a farm, they primarily serve human interests. Despite receiving some kindness, these animals still experience pain, fear, and stress, only to face premature death. Breeding animals for human use unavoidably leads to negative experiences for those animals. Engineering lives for the sole use of others perpetuates an inherent injustice, violating autonomy and the right to live for oneself, even in a relatively comfortable environment. In our society, we universally acknowledge the inherent value of human life, recognizing that creating humans solely to be used for the benefit of others is morally unacceptable. If we believe in valuing and respecting human life, we should extend that same consideration to other sentient beings. Our ethical principles must remain consistent and acknowledge the capacity for suffering and experiences among all sentient beings. Thanks for watching. Find more purpose at purposeperceived.com.